We are watching the potential for two severe weather events to occur next week across portions of the Great Lakes region. The first one being across Ohio tomorrow, and then one that could bring more severe weather to the area as an upper level piece of energy makes its way into the Great Lakes region on Tuesday and into Wednesday. In this video, we're going to break down those two severe weather events, what could possibly occur, and then also the potential for cooler weather that we could have come towards the end of April.
Here. Oh, that is a tornado.
9:02 p.m. and it is April 13th. Welcome to another update from Great Lakes Weather. Hopefully everybody is doing well, and it is now mid-April, and we are likely going to see a warming trend make its way into the region tomorrow. You can see this is Chapel Rock Beach on Lake Superior. Okay, so this is just west of, west of Grand Marais, and this is part of Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. A very nice area, one of my favorite spots in the Great Lakes region. And as the temperatures get warmer, more people will be flocking to these areas. I won't expect the warm temperatures to last for a prolonged period though next week. We will have temperatures that rise up into the 70s next week, which we're going to get to, but also it's going to come along with the potential for some severe weather. So let's get started and take a look at what is to come with regards to the weather for next week. So here we have the risk for tomorrow. This is the severe weather risk for tomorrow across portions of the New England regions, and then you can see that Ohio has a little bit of a marginal risk out here. And the thing is, the environment would be there for the potential for some severe weather, but at the same time, convective allowing models aren't really allowing convection to develop across portions of Ohio, which kind of raises some questions as to how much convective development will occur out there. But models are in agreement that there's going to be some severe weather across portions of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York come tomorrow afternoon and evening, and the potential is there for some tornadoes, some damaging winds, and hail. It looks mainly to be a damaging wind threat because it's going to be more of a linear storm mode. Out here, there is still the potential for a little bit of severe weather also, especially across eastern Ohio. I will not be chasing this event. Terrain out in eastern Ohio is not the best, so again, we're likely not going to be out there. And again, I'm pretty far from that location as it is, so it doesn't really look like the greatest setup out there. I will show you the environment though. The environment is pretty impressive, so I would just be watchful if storms do develop. They could be in a pretty favorable environment for severe weather, so going to make a note of that across the region tomorrow. And then we turn to Tuesday also. This is actually for Monday, but you can see there's a broad enhanced risk across portions of the plains with that upper level trough that I was mentioning earlier. You can see that there's potential for significant severe weather to occur across portions of the plains. This same piece of energy that's going to bring these storms will also move in to Illinois, southern Wisconsin, and western Indiana later on Tuesday. Okay, so this is an area that we're going to be watching for severe weather, and it's interesting, some of the models are hinting at some weaker setup for severe weather across Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio on Wednesday. Still a lot to be determined there. Timing's a big issue, but again, we're going to be looking at the weather models to get an idea of how this could unfold. It's still several days out, so again, just looking at raw model data, it's definitely going to change as we get to the actual time of the event. So let's dive right into some of the weather models here. First of all, we'll look at this a little bit later, but we're going to look at the setup for severe weather across portions of the eastern Great Lakes region later on. So let's go right to it with Sunday at 7 a.m. The models have been hinting at the potential for a line of convection to move across northern Michigan, across Lake Huron and Lake Erie into portions of this region. And again, this is kind of outside of the area we typically forecast, but again, it's going to have some play into how eastern Ohio evolves also. So you can see that this line of convection makes its way through. It begins to weaken and die out as we get into the afternoon hours. You see convection begin to develop across Pennsylvania, portions of New York, the Appalachian regions, starting to see that development. And then you can see that there's a little bit of convection also across portions of eastern Ohio, which is sitting at a slight risk upon the extreme eastern side of it. What's going to be interesting is how this cap evolves across portions of that region later on during the afternoon, because you can see that the temperatures quickly rise as you go above the surface, raising up those cloud bases a little bit, and you can see that there's not really too much instability until you get higher up in the elevated levels of the atmosphere. So again, that's going to be a question. How is that capping eversion going to contribute to the development of storms across portions of Ohio? And currently the models really do not show too much convection occurring until later on in the evening hours when the threat starts to diminish as a result of the loss of daytime heating. So that's kind of the big question here with the setup across Ohio, and it looks like the front is going to kind of be pushing more further to the south across portions of Pennsylvania and New York over Ohio itself. So that's really the key issue we're facing with this setup at this current moment. So just something to watch out for. We'll see if the capping inversion tends to stay in place. If it erodes, that could change things. The NAM plays out a little bit of a different way. So you can see moves through. You see that line of convection making its way across portions of Michigan. There's even some soundings showing some severe weather potential, but at the same time, though, those cloud bases are going to be very elevated according to the NAM 3K. So again, it doesn't really look like there will be a robust setups for severe weather up there, but the potential does exist for thunderstorms, and the SBC has actually highlighted that in their outlook. Progressing it forward, you can see that it kind of follows a similarity to the HRRR, except it shows convective development much earlier in the day across portions of New York. You get a sounding out ahead of these storms here in New York, marginal tornado potential, and there's really just instability, low amounts of instability, but instability going all the way up towards closer towards the upper levels of the atmosphere. So again, there's that marginal tornado potential. You can see that it starts to develop more of a linear mode. The NAM 3K depicts more convection potentially developing across portions of Ohio, but at the same time, we're going to have to see if there's going to be a capping inversion that kind of inhibits that development to occur. If a storm does develop in eastern Ohio, it does have the potential to be severe. You do see that sounding is TOR. There is good low-level wind shear present, a little bit of directional shear, good speed shear also as well, and then potential for severe weather is present with that Cape values around 1600. So if a storm does pop up across portions of Ohio, it will have that severe weather potential, and it's likely that that threat will stay pretty far to the east of Columbus. You can see that that capping inversion does increase to about 56 later on in the afternoon across Ohio. So cap really starts to impact your potential for severe weather across that region, which is why, again, it's only a marginal risker in that area. Capping inversion is going to cause some issues out there. So that's the threat for tomorrow to watch out for across portions of Ohio. It's looking like the cap is probably going to stay in place across Ohio. I've chased a capped environment before, expecting the potential for development of storms, and there really wasn't too much that happened across Indiana that one time. But again, it's still possible if a storm does initiate and break through that cap, then there could be some severe weather. So just keep that in mind. All right, so let's move into more of the longer range. We're talking about that long-range severe weather threat. I'm coming on Monday and Tuesday. So again, this is the temperatures. You can see that tomorrow the temperatures are really going to warm up across the Great Lakes region. This is at about 4 p.m. You can see temperatures are getting in the mid to upper 70s across portions of Indiana, and then the low to mid 70s across Ohio, extending all the way up into portions of Michigan. So we're going to have some warm weather making its way. You can see temperatures getting close to the mid to upper 80s across the plains regions, which is pretty warm for mid-April. With these spring-type storm setups, you do tend to get some warm weather starting to surge into that region at this time. But you can see temperatures are going to get pretty warm. This is on Monday. Temperatures continue to be in the 70s. There's going to be some very nice weather on Sunday and Monday. Good time to get out on your motorcycle if you have one, or your moped like I have. So getting into Wednesday, you can see that it does change a little bit. We have that cold front that's making its way through, that cold front that could bring some severe weather to portions of Indiana and Illinois on Tuesday. And then you can see that cold front starting to make its way through on the backside later on. An interesting thing is that where you see this surge of warm air make its way into Michigan, you get a sounding out ahead of that, and it is interesting that some soundings have come out to show potential for tornadoes. At the same time, though, the setup here is not looking all extremely impressive on the other models, but this recent run of the GFS does portray a more favorable environment. It's probably going to change within the next little bit, though. Right now, the setup does not look too great across this region. So going forward, you can see that as that cold front moves through, we will have a surge of cooler air make its way in. So the potential for frost and even a freeze into next weekend is still present. So again, if you're getting out those plants, keep that in mind, that there still could be the potential for some frost as we get into the end of next week. So watching that cooling trend potential, looks like that there will be some decent potential for a cool down near the end of April, and the CPC Climate Prediction Center has actually highlighted that as well. Let's look at how this plays out the 500 millibar level. Again, this is kind of the graphic I showed you at the beginning of the video, but you can see this is the upper level piece of energy we're watching. The first piece of energy is this one that is moving through the region right here, this kind of frontal boundary that's going to be making its way through with this trough across portions of New York, Pennsylvania. It's kind of sitting very far up to the north, which again is another reason why Ohio doesn't look to be in as robust of a threat. As that ridge moves through, you can see that trough begins to make its way in. That trough is going to make its way in, but notice how it tends to not be as deep as it makes its way up. As it makes its way up into the Great Lakes region. If the trough, or if that upper level low begins to weaken, it likely will lower our severe threat hazards for that particular time frame. And then you start to see a surge of cold air coming from the north, which will bring our temperatures down into the upper 40s to mid 50s area, and then getting back into the upper 50s later on. But it looks like a cooling trend. Below average temperatures are expected for the end of April. Here is how it's going to play out on a more nationwide perspective with the radar images here. Okay, so here's the piece of energy, the deepening low that's going to be across portions of the high plains at that current time. You see the development of storms on Monday across portions of Oklahoma, Kansas. Get a sounding out ahead of that. It doesn't really show a decent setup at that current moment, but you can see if we go a little bit forward into portions of Kansas, soundings look a little bit rough on the GFS model, but if you look at the more closer range models, it kind of looks a little bit more of a interesting threat setup for that region. We're gonna have to see how that plays out in the future models. But progressing forward, you can see that by the time we get into Tuesday, you start to see a warm frontal boundary lifting into the Great Lakes region. Is the storm potential going to bring severe weather at that time frame? I do not think so across the warm front. Not really looking to be quite a robust setup for that in that region, but you can see that there are some really decent storms developing along that low pressure system, making its way into portions of Wisconsin. Now, noticing here in the GFS model, getting a sounding on the GFS, those storms do look to be extremely elevated, not really portraying these storms super well by the looks of it. But as you get into Illinois and Indiana, you can see storms start to initiate along more of a cold frontal boundary, and they progress eastward up into portions of Michigan, Indiana, and then into Ohio as well. Get a sounding out near Ohio. Those storms are going to be moving into an environment that is lost daytime heating, and then you can see that low makes its way into portions of Wisconsin and Illinois, and we might see some convective initiation across portions of Michigan and Ohio on Wednesday. So that's kind of the thing I'm going to watch for a potential chase if that continues to hold true as we go forward. But let's get a better look at this setup with the Euro model. And again, the Euro is depicting those storms developing across portions of eastern Ohio. Get a sounding out ahead of those, still showing that marginal tornado potential, but again, capping inversion still present there with that convective inhibition. Again, that might inhibit our development of severe weather across that region. Here is the warm front making its way through. It looks like those storms could generally weaken as they approach Tuesday morning, and again, not really showing a robust setup for stronger storms along that warm front. But you can see right about Tuesday afternoon, you get a sounding out ahead of these storms. Tornado potential does show itself in the Euro, and the Euro does tend to be a better model to observe with regards to this. But you can see good directional shear. You've got Cape values around 600, which again, not really high amounts of Cape, but you do have good storm relativity, good spin. So the potential for severe weather does appear to be present across this region. Those storms will make their way in overnight on Tuesday night. Still not really showing as much severe potential, but they still could pack a punch as they make their way through. 1 a.m. Wednesday, still showing not really too good of severe potential, but that low might recover some energy and might bring some energy into portions of Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio later on Wednesday afternoon, which is what I'm going to be watching. The SPC hasn't put out anything for it just yet, but it's something to just pay attention to. It's not really looking like the most robust setup for severe weather. I will say that at this current moment. And the models may change. We'll see how things unfold, but that is currently what we're watching right now. Hopefully this was informational and helpful to you to get some of that information out there. Make sure to subscribe and stay updated. I'll keep you updated on the latest model trends and the latest updates. We forecast for Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio, and we are on YouTube, Facebook, and also now on Rumble, so you can check us out there. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you all later.